Which New York Rangers are the most universally beloved among New York Ranger fans, and which are the players that have been the most polarizing to New York Ranger fans? Gonna be doing something a little bit different here today. We're gonna rank every single player on the New York Rangers, all 21 of them, from most polarizing to most universally beloved among New York Ranger fans. Gonna be doing that and more on today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers. Welcome back, Blue Shirts fans, to episode number 790 of the Locked On New York Rangers podcast. I'm your host, John Chick. Just want to thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms. And as I just mentioned, going to be doing something a little bit different today, kind of a fun exercise here. Going to rank every single one of the 21 current New York Rangers that are currently on the NHL roster, from the most polarizing among Ranger fans to the ones that are the most universally beloved and kind of the people's champions, so to speak. But first, some quick ground rules here. Actually, before I even get into that, let me just apologize for my voice today. I'm dealing with a little bit of sore throat, just kind of trying to fight my way through it. Going to do my best here. But some quick ground rules here. We are only going by the opinions of New York Ranger fans. We don't really care if Jacob Trouba is hated by Penguin fans, or if Igor Shesterkin will occasionally be the recipient of those mocking Igor chants during, times where he goes to different away arenas, whatever the case might be. Only Ranger fans count for this exercise. And again, we're only going to look at the 21 Rangers that are currently on the roster. So we're not going to look at people like Kravtsov. We're not going to look at people like Ryan Reeves or Jake Lecision or anything like that. Just the 21 currently on the New York Ranger NHL roster. And finally, just a quick disclaimer, we're recording this episode on Tuesday. I just want to get ahead of the week a little bit, and this will be Thursday's episode. So as I'm recording this, the Tuesday night game between the Rangers and Canes has not yet happened, but nothing in that game I think is going to really change this ranking all that much. So with no further ado, let's go ahead and dive right into the countdown here. We'll start with number 21. And as far as, this is the player who, once again, I consider to be the most polarizing New York Ranger among fans of the New York Rangers. This is not my own personal list. This is just the general consensus that I get from talking with my friends who are Ranger fans, from talking with my family who are Ranger fans, from talking to you guys on Twitter DMs, emails, whatever it might be, and just kind of keeping a pulse on the general consensus from the New York Ranger fans. But number 21, as far as, last on this list, and the most polarizing New York Ranger, I'm going to go with Jacob Trouba. Somebody had to be last, and I'm going to, once again, go with the captain here. He's always going to be something of a target among Ranger fans because of the $9 million per season. You combine that with the fact that the Rangers salary cap is really tight right now, and there's some Ranger fans who might feel like this team might be better off if Jacob Trouba was not here, and you could spend those $8 million, in other ways, hang on to more players than you might otherwise be able to hang on to, at the end of this season and beyond. I'm not one of those fans. I like Jacob Trouba personally. I was critical, certainly, of him and K'Andre Miller at the start of the season when they were both scuffling, but for the most part, I think Trouba's done a nice job as captain, and he certainly has played a heck of a lot better than he did when he was dealing with those nagging injuries at the beginning of the season. But like I said, most polarizing New York Ranger, I'm going to go right now with Jacob Trouba. We move up one spot to the second most polarizing New York Ranger, and that's going to be Niko Mikkola. There are definitely some Ben Harpur truthers out there. There's some people that seem to prefer Ben Harpur over Niko Mikkola. And, Ranger fans, and I include myself in this, we can be a little bit tough on defensemen from time to time. And when you compare Mikkola to some of the other Ranger defensemen, the more prominent players, the guys who, either have been All-Stars or look like they could be All-Stars in the future, there is a little bit of a drop-off from those guys to Niko Mikkola. And I think that, some people still kind of see Mikkola as just kind of the throw-in in the Tarasenko trade. I think overall he's done a nice job. But again, Ranger fans, they're going to be tough on defensemen from time to time. And Mikkola, the one thing that makes him a target is that he does seem to take too many penalties. And there's times where I don't know that he's always quite able to keep up with the pace of play for the Rangers. But be that as it may, once again, I do think he's done a nice job for this Ranger team. And the fact that I'm having a tough time ranking even the bottom of this list as far as most polarizing Ranger players is concerned, that gives you an idea of, just how popular these players are with the Ranger fan base. I think this is one of the most likable teams that the Rangers have ever put together. And so making this list was not easy. It's very, very subjective, a lot of gray area, but I'm doing the best I can here. And, if you hear one of your favorite players near the bottom of this list, go easy on me. I'm doing the best that I can here, all right? But we move on to the third most polarizing Ranger. I'm going to say Patrick Kane. There were Ranger fans who just didn't want Patrick Kane to be on this team. And I think, you look at the players that the Rangers brought in at the trade deadline or near the trade deadline, Ranger fans have been a little bit quicker to warm up to, say, Vladimir Tarasenko than they have to Patrick Kane. Kane, obviously, early in his career had some issues away from the ice that is well documented. And like I said, there's some Ranger fans that simply did not want this man on the New York Rangers. So I can understand that to an extent. I think something else working against Kane is the fact that, before the trade, he was having the worst season of his NHL career. So I think there's some Ranger fans that are skeptical as far as, what he's still got left. But I do think that Kane is starting to round back into form and look like the player that the Rangers were hoping that he was acquiring. And I'm glad he's here because when you can get Patrick Kane for, just a second and fourth round pick, I think that's something that you have to do. But yeah, Kane's certainly still a polarizing Ranger to some extent, as is Yaroslav Halak. We move one more spot up the list here. Ranger fans were tough on Halak at the beginning of this season, and it's calmed down a little bit recently because obviously Halak has played a lot better after a really shaky start to the season. But, fans were getting really impatient. It took Halak a really long time, about a quarter of the season, for him to get his first win of the season. There were some big Alex Georgiev fans out there as well. I think some Ranger fans certainly miss Georgie. And, Halak's played for the Islanders. He's played for the Bruins, teams that Ranger fans tend not to like. So Halak, a lot of fans were being tough on him early in the season, but he's turned it around and I think has been one of the better backups in the league since going, once again, winless for about a quarter of the season. But there's some Ranger fans, even to this day, that I don't think are quite sold on Yaroslav Halak as a backup, and or they simply miss Alex Georgiev and thought he did a nice job with the Rangers, which he mostly did. We move up another spot. I'm going to go with Vincent Trocheck here. This one, I just really don't understand. I don't understand why there's a contingent of Ranger fans that have really seemingly struggled to warm up to Vincent Trocheck. He's come over here to the New York Rangers. Obviously, the pressure is on. He's the big free agent pickup in the offseason, and I think he's excelled in just about every aspect of the game. I mean, my only nitpick of Vincent Trocheck, which I've said before, and I'll say it again here, is that it does seem like, especially for a veteran player, he does take, a couple too many boneheaded penalties, and you hope that at the very least that does not happen in the playoffs. You can't be taking unnecessary penalties, stuff after the whistle when your team is fighting for its playoff lives in a best-of-7 series. So hopefully he does not do that. But Trocheck, as I've said, he's basically a B+, or maybe even better than a B+ in just about every aspect of hockey. He's an upgrade on both Strome and Kopp. They were both in the mix to maybe be back with the Rangers, center the second line. But the Rangers really need Vincent Trocheck. Chytil's had a really nice season for himself. I know some people have wanted to see Chytil get some run on the second line, get to play with Artemi Panarin. Chytil's been a little bit inconsistent. Vincent Trocheck, no such issues. Vincent Trocheck, a very consistent, very well-rounded player, and I think it's time for Ranger fans to come around on Vincent Trocheck a little bit, not make him such a polarizing player, accept him, understand the fact that he's going to be the second-line center seemingly for the foreseeable future for this team. Going to move up another spot on the list here. I'm going to go with Ben Harpur as far as, being a little bit on the side of the half of this roster, rather, that tends to be a little bit polarizing for Ranger fans. Some Ranger fans just don't understand the 2-year extension. They just maybe think that he's not really all that good. They'd rather see somebody like Zach Jones or Matthew Robertson. I was going to say Libor Hayek, but probably not Hayek. I think most Ranger fans are ready to move on there. But in general, they'd like to see his roster spot go to a younger player with more upside, and I get that to an extent. But for me, paying your number 7 defenseman what is essentially the league minimum, that's completely fine in my book. I think Ben Harpur has kind of a cool story, was close to pretty much giving up on, making it back to the NHL, and now he's carved out a role for himself with the New York Rangers. Moving up another spot on this list, I'm going to go with Barclay Goodrow. He ranks this low on this list basically for one reason and one reason only. I think there are Ranger fans that look at his salary of $3.61 million a season, and they don't really understand why the Rangers are giving that much money to a fourth liner. It's not a completely unfair stance to have. I understand it to an extent, but I think there's also Ranger fans, myself included, that appreciate Barclay Goodrow being kind of a Swiss Army knife, that guy who can play all 3 forward positions, that guy who can move up and down the lineup, better suited for the bottom 6, but he can do a lot of things, kill some penalties, play some gritty hockey, just one of those glue guys for the New York Rangers. We're going to keep everything rolling in just a second here. We're going to kind of move toward the middle portion of this list, and then we'll get to some of the most universally beloved Rangers as well. And like I said a minute ago, there really aren't any Ranger players rather that are like despised by the fans or universally disliked by the fans. I think for the most part, the fans tend to like pretty much every player on this team. And for me personally, there's not a single player on this New York Ranger roster that I dislike. I like all these guys. I think they all bring something unique and something valuable to the table. But doing a list like this, it certainly is a challenge, but we're going to keep it rolling in just a second here. First, though, we got to let everybody know today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by Locked On. No matter how the last game went, anytime you take the field, you've got a shot at greatness. Give your team the best shot at winning by recruiting more MVPs with Indeed. If you're hiring, you need Indeed, because Indeed is the hiring partner where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. And Indeed is the only job site where you are guaranteed to find quality applications that meet your must-have requirements, or else you do not pay. Instead of spending hours on multiple job sites hoping to find candidates with the right skills, you need one powerful hiring partner that can help you do it all. Indeed makes it easy to hire great talent. According to ComScore, Indeed is the #1 job site worldwide. Start hiring right now with a $75 sponsored job credit to upgrade your post at Indeed.com/lockedon. Offer is valid through March 31st. Go to Indeed.com/lockedon to claim your $75 credit before March 31st. Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Need a hire? You need Indeed. All right. We'll go ahead and just keep everything rolling here. Just kind of pick up the list where we left off. We go from Barclay Goodrow to K'Andre Miller. I think for some Ranger fans, his reputation took a little bit of a hit after that spitting incident. There were some Ranger fans that were really, really upset about that. There's other Ranger fans that insist it was an accident. He didn't mean to do it on purpose. Otherwise, if not for that incident, I think I'd have him quite a bit higher on this list. It was something that he did and just felt so out of character. I do think he can eventually recover from it, but there are some Ranger fans where it's going to take some convincing. I also know there's some Ranger fans who really like K'Andre Miller. They think he's a superstar in the making, and they basically panic at the thought of not having K'Andre Miller on this team long term. Miller is somebody that when he debuted looked like he belonged right away. The Rangers were not really sure what they were going to do, how they were going to fill out their roster a couple of years ago in terms of the defensemen. So the fact that K'Andre Miller, basically hit the ground running, did a great job for this team, looked like he belonged right away. I think a lot of Ranger fans certainly appreciate that and are big fans of K'Andre Miller to this day, in part because of that, because he got off to such a good start and looked like he was going to be one of the building blocks for this team's future. Moving up another spot on the list in terms of most universally loved New York Rangers, I'm going to go with Filip Chytil. A little bit of a spoiler here. The kid line, we're doing Chytil, and then we're going to do Kakko, and then we're going to do Lafreniere in that order because I think there's some similarities there, and I'll explain that in just a second. As for Filip Chytil, though, Ranger fans, they were really down on him last season, had a disappointing season last year until the playoffs began and the kid line kind of took off a little bit. I think it's easy to forget that, given the strong playoff that Filip Chytil had, and given, the fact that he's obviously been a lot better this season, just hit the 20-goal plateau for the first time in his career. Again, he's obviously been better this year. A little bit of an uncertain future, though, as an RFA after the season, and with the salary cap being so tight, I think there's certain Ranger fans that are okay with the Rangers, maybe trying to deal Filip Chytil. There's other Ranger fans that do not want to see that happen at all, and they want him to be a long-term Ranger. Going to be very, very interesting to see how that plays out going forward. We move up another spot in terms of most universally beloved New York Ranger, and I'm going to go with Kaapo Kakko. There are fans who have been expecting more from Kaapo Kakko that I think are starting to run a little bit low on patience because he is in the 4th year of his career. There's other fans that swear he's on the verge of a breakout. And, the Rangers, any struggle that he's had is because the Rangers and the coaching staff don't use him correctly. I thought he was breaking out earlier this year. Hasn't really happened as of yet. He's been through a little bit of a scoring drought. Got an assist in the most recent game, so, baby steps in terms of Kakko getting back on track. But I do think most Ranger fans still like Kaapo Kakko. They want to see him take off, and I think for the most part, they still have his back. They're still in his corner. Moving up another spot here in terms of most universally beloved New York Rangers, it's going to be Alexis Lafreniere. The reason I rank him ahead of both Chytil and Kaapo Kakko, a couple reasons, actually. For starters, Lafreniere is only in year 3 of his NHL career, so I think certain Ranger fans are maybe being a little bit more patient with Lafreniere than maybe they are with either Chytil or Kaapo Kakko. Also, Lafreniere is the grittiest player out of those 3. He'll get in your face a little bit. He'll mix it up after the play. He'll hit. He'll even fight on occasion. And of the 3, it still seems like he has probably the most upside. again, some Ranger fans, just like with the other kids, maybe they tend to have their patience tested from time to time when it comes to Lafreniere, but I still do get the sense that most Ranger fans still really like Alexis Lafreniere. Something I've noticed is that Lafreniere seems to be absolutely loved by his teammates. They seem to really like him and really be pulling for him, and I think myself, along with a lot of Ranger fans, still believe that Lafreniere will go on to have a very nice career for himself. To keep everything rolling here, moving up another spot in terms of most universally beloved New York Ranger, we're going to go with Jimmy Vesey here. Vesey's a tough one to rank, but I think he's just exceeded expectations by such a wide margin this season that a lot of Ranger fans are really on board with Jimmy Vesey and what he brings to the table. You'd have to scour Twitter for a long time to find any recent negative comments about Jimmy Vesey, but you guys know the story. He's brought back on a PTO, not a lot of fanfare, not a lot of hype when that happened, but he made the team, has done a great job. I would argue that he's probably been the best penalty-killing New York Ranger forward that they have this season. And I think a lot of Ranger fans really appreciate that. They appreciate his gritty style, the fact that he's altered his game a little bit to make himself tailor-made for a bottom six role. But when he was signed, I think a lot of fans, or he was in on the PTO, I think a lot of fans weren't really feeling it. They just weren't really sure what he was going to do. But I think most Ranger fans, there's some that maybe don't understand the 2-year extension, but I think most of us probably enjoy the fact that Vesey's going to be around at near the league minimum for the next 2 years as the 10th or 11th or 12th forward, whatever it might be. Moving up another spot, we're going to go with Vladimir Tarasenko in terms of most universally beloved Ranger. He's one of the tougher players to rank because, he did just get here, and expectations are high for Tarasenko, and I think a lot of how Ranger fans will eventually look at Vladimir Tarasenko, especially if he does leave in free agency after the year. It's going to have a lot to do with how he performs in the playoffs. But right now, we're seeing someone who has adapted pretty quickly to his new teammates, looks like he wants to be here, plays with, some feistiness to his game as well. He's mixed it up from time to time. And I would just have to say, the line with Vladimir Tarasenko, Mika Zibanejad, and Artemi Panarin looks fantastic right now. I think a lot of Ranger fans are enjoying watching him play with those two. And Vlad, has mostly met the high expectations since he was traded over here to the New York Rangers. Moving up another spot here, we're going to go with Tyler Mott. The Rangers have now traded for Tyler Mott 2 straight years at the deadline. A lot of Ranger fans, myself included, very excited to hear that he was coming back at the deadline this season. Just a very scrappy, gritty player, great defensive forward, great penalty killer, takes a beating, plays his heart out. A lot to like about Tyler Mott. You'll occasionally, when you go on Twitter or any social media platform, you'll see some Ranger fans say something like, I don't know why everybody's so obsessed with Tyler Mott. Why does everybody love this guy? But for the most part, they're a minority, and I think a lot of Ranger fans, and I include myself in this as well, certainly appreciate the grittiness, the scrappiness, and just the hard work that Tyler Mott brings to the table on a night-in and night-out basis. Moving up another spot here, I'm going to go with the bread man, Artemi Panarin. Let me just say, we are spoiled to have a player on this team as talented as Artemi Panarin, much less one that took less money from the Rangers than he could have gotten from the New York Islanders to, play with the Rangers. Panarin was basically the centerpiece of the rebuild, made the Rangers a cool place to want to go to. And another reason why I think Ranger fans tend to like Panarin, it just looks like he's having the time of his life out there playing hockey. I mean, he's always smiling from ear to ear, and I just think that resonates with fans. He enjoys himself. He loves being a New York Ranger, and, I just think overall he has a great time out there, and, you should have a great time out there. You're playing a professional sport for a living. He does come under fire from Ranger fans from time to time, though. I think certainly last year in the playoffs is a prime example of that because, last year in the playoffs, he just kind of struggled. He just didn't look like Artemi Panarin. He wasn't playing instinctive hockey. It looked like he was overthinking everything. There were some turnovers. Even in this year's regular season, there's more turnovers from Artemi Panarin than you'd probably like to see. But be that as it may, to me, it's just a small price to pay for everything else that he brings to the table. And I think for the most part, most Ranger fans do like Artemi Panarin, but you're always going to be under the spotlight. You're always going to face some scrutiny when you've got a contract that pays you $11.6 million a season, as Artemi Panarin does. We're going to go ahead and keep everything rolling in just a second. We're getting toward the top of this list in terms of what I believe are the most universally beloved New York Rangers, and we're going to do all that good stuff in just a second. But first, we do have to let everybody know, that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by FanDuel. The tournament is heating up, and now is the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet does not win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Then you can bet on everything, from the money line to point scores and threes drained. Plus, FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with a same-game parlay. So do not miss the chance to get your no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/LockedOn. That's FanDuel.com/LockedOn to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, we'll keep everything rolling here, and one more time, do want to apologize for my voice today, but we'll get through this together for sure. I'm going to move up one more spot on the list to Chris Kreider. And let me just see how many are left here, because I want to start doing a countdown. I forgot to number these, but all right, so we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, so Chris Kreider is number 6 on the list. Number 6 most universally beloved New York Ranger. I think Ranger fans, certainly appreciate his longevity, his leadership, his scoring ability, the fact that he's playing his best hockey now in these last 2 seasons than we've ever seen him play, despite, turning 30 last year and 31 this year. I think the fact that he's the elder statesman of the New York Rangers resonates with some fans. There's people that, right now might be like in college, and when Kreider debuted with the Rangers, they were in elementary school. Just to kind of throw that out there as an example. So that's pretty cool in and of itself. He spans a couple different, generations or whatever you want to call it. You know what I mean? He's been on the Rangers for a long time, and, that's kind of cool to see that kind of longevity. Not a lot of players spend that much time with the same team in the NHL. I think also just the fact that Kreider agreed to an extension with the Rangers, clearly wanted to be here. He could have taken the easy way out, not sign the extension, got himself traded, signed with another team in free agency. He didn't do that. He wanted to stay with the Rangers, and I think that resonates with Ranger fans as well. And he's getting rewarded for it, because now he's on a team that is stacked and is hopefully ready to contend for a Stanley Cup championship. I do think, though, with Kreider, he does come under fire every now and then from Ranger fans. He goes through those funks where he's just a complete ghost out there. There's times where he doesn't use his size and strength to his advantage as much as he could, especially when it comes to, fighting for the puck along the boards. There's times where he can be a little slow getting back on the back check. But be that as it may, I think Kreider is somebody that, Ranger fans are mostly still happy that he's here. He's climbing a lot of, all-time New York Ranger lists, getting into the top 10 in goals scored and top 10 in games played and top 10 in points and top 10 in whatever it might be, playoff games for sure. He's getting up there on that list. So, I think Chris Kreider, for the most part, still a beloved New York Ranger, and somebody that I think the Ranger fans are pretty much all still happy that he's, remained with the team over the years here. Number 5, Braden Schneider, another guy who basically, he got promoted in the middle of last season, basically just hit the ground running, looked like he belonged right away. He's big, he's tough, he can give you some offense from time to time. The Rangers traded up in the draft that year to get one pick ahead of the New Jersey Devils and take Braden Schneider. Very good chance Schneider goes to the Devils if the Rangers don't do that. And I think we're all happy that the Rangers made that move. There's just very little nitpick when it comes to Braden Schneider, and what he brings to the ice on a night in and night out basis. Very consistent player, and somebody that I think a lot of Ranger fans are probably hoping will remain with this team for many years to come here. Number 4 on the list, we're going to go with Igor Shesterkin. I would probably have him up, at the top, maybe number 2, number 3, somewhere in there. As it is, we're going to put him at number 4. The only reason he doesn't rank higher is very simply because of the position he plays. And when you're a goalie in this league, when things are going great, you're awesome, you're the hero, you're the man, you're the Vezina winner, you're this, you're that, everybody loves you. When things aren't going so well, you do tend to come under some criticism. We saw that with Igor Shesterkin a little bit earlier this season. So it's basically just the position that Igor Shesterkin plays that is preventing him from possibly being at the very, very top of this list in terms of most beloved, most universally beloved New York Rangers. But, we do get deafening Igor chants on pretty much a night in and night out basis at Madison Square Garden. So Igor's right up there. And again, another Ranger that I think pretty much every fan is hoping will be here for a very long time. Imagine you get like 15 years of Lundqvist and then 15 years of Igor Shesterkin. I mean, if that happens, then clearly you're living right. Number 3, I'm going to go with Adam Fox. It's very rare that you see Ranger fans become critical of Adam Fox. Guy's just a complete package. And to me, he is still the guy in terms of NHL defensemen, where if you're a general manager and you could just push a button and have any defenseman in this league on your roster, I think Adam Fox would be the guy that most general managers would select. Another Ranger defenseman who started very young, looked like he belonged right away. And if he keeps doing what he's doing, he's going to be up there on the list as far as, all-time NHL defensemen. There's a long way to go there, and a lot of seasons left to be played for Adam Fox, but he's got that kind of trajectory. The only thing that works against Adam Fox, and the only reason why you may occasionally hear some criticism of him, if you go on social media or whatever the case might be, is he does have that big contract. What is he, $9.5 million per season? So anytime he makes a mistake, which is rare, there are certain Ranger fans who will, maybe make a comment or two about Adam Fox, but man, Adam Fox is here. It's an enormous contract. Yes, it's worth every single penny because he is, the defenseman in this league right now. Already a Norris winner and probably more to come at some point throughout his career. And even if he doesn't win another Norris, he'll be right there as far as elite defenseman in this league for many, many years. Number 2, we're going to go with Ryan Lindgren. I'll say right now, I do think, I don't have favorite players in the way that I used to, but I think right now, if you had to make me pick somebody, Ryan Lindgren is my favorite player on this New York Ranger team. I just don't see how any Ranger fan could watch what this guy does on the ice and not like the guy. Ranger fans to begin with, they want some guys that bring some size and some toughness and some grit and some physicality. Ryan Lindgren gives that to you every single game, leaves his heart on the ice, just plays his tails off. The Rangers, in this recent stretch without Ryan Lindgren, have actually been winning at a very impressive rate. But Ryan Lindgren, when you look at the Rangers' record over the past couple of seasons when he is not in the lineup, it's staggering how much better the Ranger record is when he's in the lineup versus when he's not in the lineup. He really makes an impact on this team. Throw in the fact that the Rangers stole him in a trade with the Boston Bruins, and, what's not to like. I know there's some Ranger fans, and I include myself in this one as well, that aren't sure that he's going to be here completely long-term because, there's so many young players on this Ranger team that they need to re-sign. But, I really hope, we did an episode about this not too long ago, I really hope that the Rangers find a way to make it work with Ryan Lindgren. He is a big-time fan favorite right now, and I know I'm not the only Ranger fan that is looking to see him back in action on Tuesday night against the Carolina Hurricanes. And again, by the time you hear this episode, that game will have already happened. But be that as it may, as I'm recording it, I'm very much looking forward to seeing Ryan Lindgren back out there with Adam Fox. And finally, that brings us to the number 1 most beloved New York Ranger, and that's going to be Mika Zibanejad. I was pretty close to putting Lindgren ahead of Mika, but I think that, with Mika Zibanejad, he's got a little bit more star power than Ryan Lindgren. He's somebody that's a little bit more widely recognized among Ranger fans. He's somebody that you could not let walk under any circumstances. I think there are a lot of Ranger fans that would have revolted if, the Rangers did not get a long-term extension done with Mika Zibanejad. Fortunately, they did. And, again, Mika just a little bit more recognizable than Ryan Lindgren. You could be anywhere on the world. If you bump into Mika Zibanejad, you're going to know that's Mika Zibanejad. And as far as on the ice, this guy just brings it every single night. So much effort in all 3 zones. Even very casual hockey fans tend to like Mika Zibanejad if they happen to check out a New York Ranger game. I got my friend Steve into the playoffs last year a little bit. He was watching the Rangers down the stretch, and Mika very quickly became one of his favorites. I remember he texted me something along the lines of, this Mika dude just rips pucks at the net. So I thought that was pretty funny because, he doesn't know the half of it because he doesn't watch the Rangers as much as we all do. But, Mika Zibanejad, again, universally loved. Show me anybody on social media, any tweet that you can find where somebody's being critical of Mika Zibanejad. It's very rare to see anything like that, and understandably so. This guy is a phenomenal player and brings the effort in every single aspect of hockey every single night, and I could not be more happy that Mika Zibanejad will be with the New York Rangers for the long term. He, of course, signed that extension before this most recent season. So, that'll pretty much do it. I mean, look, your list might be a little bit different from this one. We do rankings from time to time on this show. And, everybody's going to have a different list. But again, I was just kind of finding the general consensus among Ranger fans and just trying to rank them accordingly, according to how Ranger fans feel about certain players, from most polarizing to the most universally beloved. Hope you guys enjoyed the list. Hope you guys enjoyed doing something a little bit different here today. But that will pretty much do it for today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. If you'd like to get in touch with this podcast, please send an email to lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Once again, that is lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. And definitely give us a follow on Twitter as well, @LO_NY_Rangers. Once again, that is @LO_NY_Rangers. And definitely subscribe to the Locked On New York Rangers YouTube channel. Thanks again, guys. I'll see you next time. Thanks for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. Now make your second listen Game to Game NHL. Every moment, every top performance, every result, Locked On Game to Games covers every game from across the NHL with local analysis that only Locked On can deliver. Follow Game to Game on Locked On NHL, available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts.